You're listening to the Love Unplugged podcast, episode 120. Are you struggling to grow your social media organically? If so, you're in the right place. Today we're chatting about key strategies to grow your community organically, whether you should be adjusting your social media strategy and how frequently, how to get the most out of Reels, and why boosting posts may not be getting you the results you actually want. So without further ado, let's jump on in. Hey there, I'm your host, Jessica Fergon, and I am passionate about doing the inner work needed to reach your goals. Let me be your guide as we navigate all the fears and insecurities that surface when it's time to step outside of your comfort zone. Along with my knowledgeable guests and industry experts, I'm here to teach you how to reawaken your life purpose and passion and create the steps to turn your intentions into action. Ultimately, my goal is to empower you to rise above those blocks holding you back and start living a life that you are worthy and deserving of. So come on, it's time to slow down, find a comfy spot with your favorite organic tea, and get inspired. Thank you for tuning in to the Love Unplugged podcast. Hello, loves. Today I am joined by the lovely Laura Bitoyu, founder of B Squared Social, a boutique social media marketing agency based here in Vancouver, BC. Laura's agency offers social media marketing solutions for premium brands and service-based professionals. With clients featured in Forbes, Inc., and Business Insider, her team is proud to offer coaching, consulting, online courses, and social media management services. So welcome, Laura. I am just so honored to have you as my guest. I'm so excited to jump into your story and learn all your advice. But before we start, for those that don't know you yet, I would love for you to share a little bit more about you personally.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be here. So hi, everyone. My name is Laura Bitoyu. I live in Vancouver, BC. I am originally from South Africa, but I moved officially back to Canada in 2015. A bit about me. I'm married. I have a dog who is like my best friend. And yeah, love living in Vancouver.
Wow, South Africa to here.
I know.
That's quite a difference.
Yeah, it's a lot.
Why did you move here?
So I kind of lived back and forth growing up. My mom is Canadian and my dad is South African, and they're both entrepreneurs. So kind of grew up between Canada and South Africa. I moved back to South Africa in 2013 thinking that I was going to complete my law degree and did a year of law school, and I did not love it. So I moved back to Canada shortly after I'd met my boyfriend, who is now my husband. So I think he was kind of the reason I decided to come back full time.
Gotcha. Okay. So now that I've learned that you've started a law degree, let's start at the beginning. What was your journey leading up to creating this business that you now have? Mm-hmm. And what were you doing before? What did that include? What did it look like?
Yeah. So I wasn't sure what I wanted to do like my whole life growing up. I knew I wanted to work for myself because I'd worked throughout high school. I'd worked throughout university. And I didn't like having someone in charge of me telling me what to do. I didn't like not having that autonomy. So I knew that I wanted to work for myself. I just didn't know what that looked like. So I did my undergraduate degree in business. And I thought, this will be a good foundation for whatever it is I decide to do. In 2013, I started working with a few friends who had online businesses, other businesses, helping them with their social media. And I enjoyed it, but I never once thought that it would be something that could be a full-time job. So never even thought about it. I went to law school for a year and I liked being in school. I loved learning. But I did a summer internship and it was like, I just couldn't imagine working, 12-hour days every day, making very little money in exchange for the amount of energy and time you put into it. So I realized that law wasn't going to be the right fit for me. So dropped out of law school, moved back to Canada, and started working in a restaurant. Most of my experience prior to that had been restaurants. I was a server. I'd done management. So I was working in this restaurant, worked my way up to managing, and realized that we had very little social media presence. So I kind of took that over, again, not thinking anything of it, just thought like, this is something that needs to be done and I'll just do it. So on my days off, I would come in and coordinate photo shoots. I would write the captions. I did literally everything for our social media presence. And it was really rewarding because we would have people come in and they would literally just show us a photo from Instagram and be like, we want this, this, and this, and like just order directly off their phones. So I loved seeing that. I loved knowing that people were seeing our content and that it was like motivating them to do something with it. So I loved that. And it was interesting because we'd have clients and customers come in and they would say like, oh, who's doing your social? Like, who's running this account? And I'd always just say, oh, it's just me, like, whatever, like not thinking it was a big deal. And so many of them would say, well, if you ever decide to make a business out of it, we'd love to work with you. And I kind of thought they were just being nice at first, but, after a while I realized like, this is something I could actually do. So eventually took the leap and decided to, start my own business. I had originally started doing web design and branding because I thought that was more something I felt more comfortable with initially. But as that grew, people kept asking me for social. So I decided to switch to exclusively social media marketing. In about, what year was that? I guess I started my business in 2018. So I officially switched to exclusively social 2019-ish, like end of 2019. Mm-hmm. So it was, I think I'm getting my years really wrong. Sorry. It's been a very long year.
Yes, I totally second
that.
Yeah,
I'm like, I don't know what year it was. After about a year, I decided to switch to exclusively social media marketing.
Giving them exactly what they want and need.
Yeah. After like taking a few bumpy paths off the beaten trail or whatever in the meantime. But yeah, eventually sticking to social.
It's kind of what it takes, right? Is like trial and error and trying to figure things out along the way. And then finally you'll end up in the place that you're meant to be.
Absolutely. Yeah. I completely agree with that. So true.
So when you started this social media account for your the restaurant that you're working for, did you have any idea what you were doing?
It was funny because I actually did not have a personal Instagram account for so long. I found Instagram very toxic and I didn't like it. So I hadn't had an account for myself for about 4 years. And so it was kind of trial by fire. I was like, okay, I have to figure this out quickly because I'd done social media for, friends of mine and their businesses. But Instagram was such a different beast back then. This was like 2013, like it was super straightforward. I would post a photo of whatever it was and we would get like 1,000 likes. Like it was just so different. And I noticed like, even from 2013 to 2015 to 2016, like it was such a different beast. So yeah, I had to kind of figure everything out and figure out what had changed in that time that I'd taken off.
Okay. Now, what was your experience creating and growing your own business? So you actually like decided this is it. I'm going to start this business and do something with it. What was that like?
The first 2 years were really, really hard. The first year was probably the hardest. I remember my husband and I were joking about it yesterday. Like I would get like one email a week and it would be like a lead and maybe not even a very good one, but I would be like so excited and I'd be like, oh my goodness, like this is going to be my client. Like I have to like sign this person and it would be such a big deal. So it was really hard in the beginning. Like you don't have anyone to, tap into or those connections. Maybe you don't have those established yet. So the beginning was really hard. I would say kind of around March, April. So right after COVID kind of happened in 2020, was when I kind of hit my stride and I started to have like a very consistent roster of clients. My services started to book out. And then kind of like September, October is when everything just kind of skyrocketed. So yeah, it was the first year was really, really tough. And then it kind of got progressively easier as I was able to, build my connections, build my network, get a feel for what it was that I was offering and what made me unique. So yeah, the first couple of years were really hard though.
That's interesting that it started taking off when COVID hit. Like
I know, it's like the opposite.
Everybody's just stuck at home. They're like, I might as well work on something.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. A lot of my clients, it's funny, some of them had one business and with COVID, they're like, okay, we're going to add like a second business or we're going to do a second offering. So a few of my clients, I run multiple projects for them as well, which is really cool.
That's awesome. Now, what were your biggest learnings and maybe your biggest rewards throughout the whole process of starting the business all the way to now?
Yeah, I think like the biggest rewards have been the people I've met. I know that probably sounds corny, but like my favorite part about what I do is like how many cool people I meet, how many cool people I connect with, working with people on their projects to bring them to life. It's so rewarding. So I love that. So my biggest learnings, same kind of idea is that the people you meet will be the most important part of your business. It's almost always that my best clients have come to me from someone else's referral. So that's probably one of my biggest learnings is that the people you meet, those relationships are priceless. And, one thing I see a lot is people they're not eager, but they're quick to burn bridges. Whereas I have been very intentional with everyone I've connected with. I'm very careful with my relationships and I really value them. So trying not to burn any bridges like I see some other people do has been another learning as well. But yeah, overall, like so many rewards, like being able to work for yourself is just amazing. Having that autonomy over your schedule, that freedom and that flexibility is just so, so important to me. And it's been really rewarding.
Have you ever struggled? Like for me, I find it's very different going from like an employee mindset working for a company where your like schedule is set and like, when you go in, you know what you have to do, your responsibilities are set, to now being like an entrepreneur mindset where like you set your schedule, you set what you're going to work on for the day, and then like sticking to it.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, I like it because, some days you just don't feel like going into work and I can take the day off if I feel that way. But yeah, it's so important to not take too much advantage of that. Like you still need to have some structure in your day to day and your scheduling.
Yeah, 100%. Now let's dive into social media since this is your area of expertise. Yes. I want to learn everything I possibly can from you. So what does a solid social media strategy look like?
Yeah, I always say that the perfect social media strategy is the one you can actually execute. So, people will spend hours and hours coming up with this like huge strategy, these great ideas, and then they never actually implement or execute any of it. So a solid social media strategy is the one that you're actually implementing and you're actually executing. Every account is very different based on their goals, but also on what you're, in terms of what you're able to contribute and commit to growing the account. So I think the foundational work is really, really important, figuring out your positioning, your brand clarity, your voice. Those are kind of the foundational pieces I would start with. But yeah, every account is a little bit different with what their social media strategy looks like. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is creating a strategy that you're actually going to be able to follow through on.
Yeah, making sure you're not going too crazy.
Yeah, like people.
It's doable.
Yeah, exactly. People will say like, oh, I'm going to post like 10 times a day or whatever, a month, a week, whatever they decide. And they don't actually follow through. So as long as whatever your goals are for social media, if there's something you can actually stick to, I think that's the most important.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, should we be sticking to one strategy for an X period of time? Or should we be constantly looking at it and like adjusting as we need?
Yeah, I think when you have a social media strategy, you want to have, some sort of consistency in the beginning. The reason I say that is because you want to try everything enough times to have that data to go back to. So when we build a social media strategy out for our clients, we usually stick to it for about 3 months. And then from there, we'll reassess what needs to be changed. But having a very well-rounded strategy in the beginning is important as well, because you want to make sure that you have, video included, you have a story strategy, you have a regular feed post strategy, maybe you're collaborating with influencers. So, once you've built out that initial strategy, commit to it for at least 3 months. And then from there, you absolutely can tweak it. We like to review our results or our insights every week and every month and then every quarter as well. So, the first couple of weeks when you're just getting started, you don't really know what's working yet. It can be really hard to see results. And one of the reasons we have an agreement with our clients is that it's a minimum 3-month contract, because that first 3 months is when you're first starting out. You have no idea what's going to work. You have no idea how people are going to respond to your content, and even how your content fits into the bigger picture or the bigger Instagram ecosystem. You don't know how people are going to be sharing it or responding to it. So we like to have that commitment in the beginning of 3 months for a content strategy. And then from there, of course, testing and tweaking. But yeah, that initial period is super important.
Gotcha. That makes sense. Now, working with so many clients, I'm sure you see everything. You've seen it all.
Yeah, I've seen some things, yeah.
So I'd love to know, what are some mistakes that you consistently see that prevent us from growing our communities and attracting those ideal clients?
Yeah, so the biggest one I see, and it's probably not what you expect, but people will wait for things to be perfect. So many of my clients, I do a lot of one-on-one coaching and consulting, and they'll say, okay, well, thank you for all that information, but we're going to wait until our website's done, or we're going to wait until our branding is done, or we're going to wait until I have a fancy camera so I can record reels. I feel like people are always waiting for something. That's not to say that you shouldn't try and make things the best they can be, but I don't want people to be stuck by perfectionism or just be absolutely paralyzed by the idea that things have to be perfect before you can get started. So, starting with what you have is so important. When I started making my reels, if you go look at my first ones, they're super embarrassing, but I knew that if I waited for things to be perfect, they would never get done. So that's one of the biggest mistakes I see people consistently making, is waiting for things to be perfect.
Yeah, that's so true. Perfect is the enemy of good,
Yeah.
or there's a saying around that. I can never get it right,
Yeah.
but
Yeah. Done is better than perfect is another good one.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes, love that. Now, what are the key components to organic growth?
Yeah. So I think, having that social strategy we talked about in the beginning is really important. But more than that, I would say good content. And this means something different for every account and every audience. So shareable, relatable, valuable to your audience in some way. Having a really solid content strategy is the most important part of organic growth. Beyond that, making space for collaborations. If you are a product-based business, for example, that would be making a budget set aside for working with influencers. If you're service-based or a personal brand, making sure you're collaborating with others in your space or people who have a like-minded audience so that you're sharing that audience. And making time in the beginning to be very consistent with your outbound engagement. Letting people know that you're there in the first place is also really important.
That's such great advice. I love that. Now, with you being a social media expert, I kind of want to know your advice with this. So we all know that the rabbit hole on social media is pretty deep, and you can go down that rabbit hole and spend insane amounts of time on social media, and it can impact your mindset. It can impact your emotional state and whatnot.
Absolutely.
So how do you structure your time and maybe suggest your clients do so as well, so that they're putting in the right amount of time engaging without having to it turn into hours a day?
Yeah, such a good question. This is something I've struggled with throughout my social media journey. This year I put a time limit on Instagram on my phone. So I only spend an hour and a half, and then I get a notification that my time is up. And that is my time for Instagram. So when you block out your time for Instagram or for any social media platform, it forces you to be very intentional with how you're spending your time on the app. Before I had that time limit, I would spend hours and hours a day. There was days when it was 10 hours of screen time, 12 hours. That was very normal for me. And I noticed that it was weighing on me mentally, but also creatively. I didn't feel as creative. I felt like comparing myself to everyone else, and my work didn't feel good enough. So one really key component is to create more than you consume. So your focus needs to be on creating the type of content your audience wants without you focusing too much on what everyone else is doing. And that again comes back to, setting those time limits and being really intentional with your time. Obviously, you need to show up daily to have ongoing growth, create those connections. Being intentional with your time is really important.
Oh, I love that. That's so true. And I have that timer set on my phone too.
Yeah.
I've noticed there's this on my Samsung, there's this app that is for mindset or something like that.
Yeah. It
totally times out all of your applications and then it cuts you off for the day.
That's so smart. That's exactly what I need.
It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, no, definitely being intentional with your time and just being aware of how much time you're spending on the app. And yeah, create more than you consume. That's one thing that always helps me too.
Yeah, totally. Now, in your business, are you the one that is on behalf of your clients going to find their ideal clients and creating conversations with them?
Not me personally, but my team. Yeah, that's what our team does.
How do you find those ideal clients without getting stuck in that rabbit hole? Do you have any tips or advice on that?
Yeah, so we have an outbound engagement strategy that we have built out for each client. We have a spreadsheet that we use that literally breaks down who we're targeting, how we're targeting them, where we're finding them, what we're saying. All of that is broken down. There are strategies. There's Gary Vee's strategy. It's called the $1.80 strategy, where you're supposed to leave your 2 cents on 9 posts in the top nine of the top posts in 9 different hashtags. So you're basically leaving, I'm really bad at math, 90 comments a day. It might be more than that. It's $1.80, so it's 2 cents on however many posts.
It's Friday.
Yeah, it's a long week. Yes. So that's one strategy. I find it very time consuming, but it does work. So that's one thing that people can consider, or even scaling that back and following that strategy on a smaller scale. So you're not spending hours and hours a day doing it. But yeah, that's something we will look at. It really depends on the business. If you are a local business and you're trying to get foot traffic in the door, then focusing on location tags is a great way to reach people. Yeah, there's a bunch of different ways you can do it. Hashtags are another great one.
I didn't even think about that. Like, honestly, looking at the hashtags that my ideal client would be searching for, and then looking at the posts that are in that, I didn't even come to that conclusion at all.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because you have to think about how your ideal client uses Instagram as well. We have a couple accounts where our ideal client skews a little bit older, so we know that they're not using hashtags. They don't even know what hashtags are. So our strategy for them is a little bit different than our accounts who are targeting a younger audience. But yeah, at the end of the day, coming back to, you have to be really, this also goes back to the strategy, being really crystal clear on how you're reaching your ideal audience and how they are using the app so you can meet them where they are.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, analytics. This is an area that I know a lot of people struggle with, is knowing what the most important stats are that we should be looking at, and how often do you analyze your stats?
Yeah, great question. So this again comes back to the strategy and your overall goals for your account. So if your goal is to grow your account, then you want to be looking at things like your reach, your growth rate. If you're trying to sell, I would look at website clicks. I would look at phone calls. I would look at emails. If you're a local business, I would look at the Get Directions taps. Things like that show you're on the right track, but it really depends on what your goals are. Then, of course, making sure that you're measuring those metrics that correlate with those goals is the most important. I like to look at mine weekly, monthly, and quarterly. So each week, just making sure I'm on the right track. If I see anything is really off, then I'll have to adjust the strategy for the week ahead. This is, of course, after our first kind of 3-month preliminary period. From there, I will look at the monthly trends to see overall what's working, what's not working. And then quarterly, taking a step back and looking at the big picture and seeing how it's all coming together for our yearly goals.
Gotcha. Okay. Now with Reels, this is one of the newest features on Instagram. Yeah. I still haven't gotten into that, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Yeah, I love Instagram Reels. I think they're so fun. They're a great way to diversify your content strategy and to connect with your audience in a different way. The nature of them allows us to really build on the know, like, and trust factor. So I'm a huge fan of them.
How can we be creative with Reels? I see all these people posting such creative little videos and stuff, and I'm just sitting here, I'm like, how did you even come up with that?
Yeah, I mean, this again kind of goes back to the other question about being intentional with your time. I do not look at Reels from anyone in my industry or my niche because I don't want to be overly influenced by them. And I also don't want to compare myself. So all of my Reels are either from my own insights. I'll go into insights, see which of my posts were the best performers, and then repurposing those into Reels. Or I will get ideas completely outside of my industry, outside of my niche. My husband's in med school, so he follows a bunch of doctors who are doing Reels, and I will look at what they're doing and get ideas from them. So completely different industry, but it's cool to be able to take that same sort of formula and apply it to a different industry like social media. But yeah, I would say experimenting is super important, looking at what already is working for your account, and just having fun with it.
Oh, that's such a great idea. I love that you're branching out into different industries and you're kind of blocking out yours so that you can be fresh and kind of clear with your focus.
Exactly. Yeah. I'm very, very intentional with the content I consume.
Now with Facebook and Instagram ads, this is like a black hole, especially for me. I just usually pick the automatic setting and then I just kind of go, and it's not always the best results.
Definitely not.
So how can we use it so that we're actually getting the results?
Yeah, I think audience targeting is really important. If you're just doing the automatic targeting, I find it quite weak. So I would focus on, either building out, if you're starting with a cold audience, building out a solid list of audiences that are centered around similar people in your niche or similar interests that they may already have. Also, I love to use my mailing list. I will use that to create a lookalike audience for my mailing list and targeting those people. But yeah, I really suggest if people are just boosting and going for the automatic ones, I don't suggest that. I would say having a bit of an audience targeting strategy in place will be so beneficial for your ad strategy.
How often should we be promoting our posts?
This is a good question. It really depends on your budget and your goals. One thing I see a lot is someone will come to me and say oh, I have a launch next week. I need to run ads. And at that point, it's almost too late. You want to be having ads running for a while so that you're collecting that data and you already know what's working for you. If you're trying to run ads to a cold audience out of nowhere and you're trying to sell them something, like it's not going to work. So the sooner you can start, if you can only start with, maybe a couple $100 a month, just so you have that database, you have that information built up that you can go back to. I think that's a great place to start. But yeah, most of the time, the biggest thing I see is someone will come to me and say like, oh, this is launching tomorrow. Let's get ads up. And it's like that needed to be done a while ago. So yeah.
Gotcha. Now, one question that I have with ads itself, like, should you wait until your community has started like liking it or commenting on it or whatever before you promote? Like, does that have any impact on the reach that it's going to get, given that there's activity on it already?
I mean, so it sounds like you're talking about like promoting it directly in Instagram or like a boosted post versus in the Facebook Ads Manager. Is that correct?
Yeah, I never go to Facebook ads.
Okay, yeah. So if you're boosting it directly in the app, like it's not terrible, but it's like not the best use of your money at all. But I mean, you absolutely can do that. I just don't really recommend it for my clients unless we've already built out their audience sets on Facebook and then Instagram pulls in those audiences for you. Yeah, I wouldn't suggest that as like a starting point though.
Okay.
But
well, thank you for that.
Yeah, but to go back to your question, if you have content that's performing well organically, that's usually an indication of what will work well for you as an ad as well. More likely for a warm ad than a cold set. But yeah, that's usually like, it means you're on the right track.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, thank you for that.
Yeah, of course.
Now, as a busy entrepreneur who's working with clients and who's also running her own company, I would love to know, how do you set yourself up for success daily? What does your routines look like? How do you stay organized?
Yeah, I try to get up early every day. It kind of varies. In the winter, I struggle with my morning routine. In the summer, it's a bit easier. So I'm up by 5 usually every day. This morning I slept in a little till 7, which was crazy for me, but I needed the break. So every day is a little bit different. But my morning routine is where I get started. So I meditate in the morning. I have like a 5-minute journal where I write down 3 things I'm grateful for. And then I have this bigger planner that I use. It's by Lisa Michaud. She's a local business coach and goal setting expert. So I use her planner every day and it basically maps out like my 30-day goal, my 90-day goal, 100-day goals, and you kind of work your way backwards from there. So I use that just to keep myself focused and on track for my goals throughout the day. Kind of midday, I like to take a break. I'll go walk my dog. But yeah, the nice thing about like working for yourself is having a bit of flexibility even within that structure. So I try not to have my days be identical, but my morning routine is always the same.
Awesome. I love morning routines.
Yeah.
They're definitely set the tone for your day.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah. If I like miss my routine, I can like feel it by midday. I'm like, why do I feel so frazzled? And then it's like, oh, you didn't do your morning routine. So yeah.
Exactly. And I started doing tapping in the mornings too.
Oh, cool.
Oh my God. Like I look forward to it now where I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to take a 15-minute break and I'm just going to go tap it out.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I love that. It's so good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. So I want to learn more about your services. What do you have to offer?
Yeah. So we do have a bit of a wait list right now for our services, which is a good problem to have, I guess.
Yes.
We have our Reel Talk course, which is our course on getting started on Reels. We have social media management services, which we also have a wait list for. And then our online consulting and coaching, we also have a wait list for. So everything's a little bit backed up right now besides our course. But we are working on expanding our offerings and creating some sort of group coaching programs moving forward as well.
Ooh, that's exciting. And that's definitely a good problem to have.
I know. When I like saw that question, I was like, oh my goodness, like I actually don't have any services right now.
Well, congratulations with that.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Thank you so much.
Awesome. So if anybody wants to learn more about you, where can they connect with you? Where do you hang out the most?
Yeah, I'm mostly on Instagram. It's at bsquared.social. And I'm also on Clubhouse. My handle on Clubhouse is at LauraB2, like the number 2 and the letter B. And my website is bsquared.social.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Laura, for taking the time to share your entrepreneurial journey and for giving us such incredible insights into how we can create a solid social media strategy and grow our following. Your services and experience are so valuable to us entrepreneurs. And I'm just so thankful to be able to have connected with you today.
Amazing. Thank you so much. It was so nice chatting with you, and I really appreciate your time and having me here.
I'm Jessica, and thanks for tuning in today to Love Unplugged, the podcast. If there are any questions or topics you'd love answered on the show, head on over to www.projectloveco.com and share your request with me. If you haven't yet, go to iTunes and subscribe, rate, and review this podcast and share it with a loved one. Your feedback means the world to me, and the community we've created is what fuels our discussions here. After all, this is all for you. Join me next time for another unplugged conversation.